How's it hanging, everybody? I'm here today to give you my very early impressions of this game, Fantasian, which is a brand new game from Apple Arcade or on Apple Arcade. It is created by the creator of Final Fantasy. The original 5 Final Fantasy games were directed by this guy, Hironobu Sakaguchi. He also has credits in classic games like Chrono Trigger, the Mana series, the Saga series, and a bunch of other classic JRPGs from Squaresoft and Square-Enix. In the past 10 years, he shifted his focus to mobile games, and this is his first kind of like, I would say, console level mobile game or JRPG game that's been on mobile devices like this one is. So this was on Apple Arcade. Apple just released, I think, 32 Apple Arcade games today, which is insane. This one hit my device last night, so I got started on it last night, and I played it a little bit today with a few gaps in my day. I filled in the gaps with this game, and I got probably about 3 hours in. So I think I've gotten a good early, I'm at a point where I can give you guys a good early impression of what's happening with this game. So let me start off by saying how I played, because I think that's relevant. I have a relatively new iPad, and I hooked that up to my TV. I played with a DualShock controller, and it worked really well. I've done that before because I have an adapter that does that. So I kind of pulled the adapter out of the drawer, dusted it off, and used it for this purpose. And I'm really glad that I did, because it basically let me play this game as if it were a console game. And the only real downside is that the window, or you're kind of watching the game in a slightly smaller box, then it's not going to fill up your whole TV because of the aspect ratio of the iPad. It's different, so it gives you a smaller image on your TV, but ultimately it was okay. It helps if you have a big TV for things like that. So it was okay. I had no real issues with it. I was surprised that it felt so much like a console experience when I set it up that way. I also played today a bit on my phone, and I can honestly say, I don't like playing games like this on my phone typically, and I just don't play games like this on my phone typically, like probably many of you. But this game I found was very uncompromised in mobile form. The biggest thing is that you don't have to guide your character around by pretending that your screen is a thumbstick, and that you don't have to guide your character around with a thumbstick that's always weird, and you always got to kind of recalibrate it and stuff like that. No, it's not like that. It's more like a point and click adventure game where you just tap on the screen and your character walks there. And it's really easy. It's really easy to get used to. I had no issues with it. I would also say that, it's a little bit like if you've played Final Fantasy 15 Pocket Edition. It feels a little bit like that, but better, I think. I think this is actually much better implemented for mobile. The battles are incredibly touch-friendly. The menu systems are incredibly touch-friendly. So, mobile is not my favorite way to play, but if I'm being honest, this is like going to be a 30-plus hour game, at least this first chapter. At least that's what I read on with an interview with Sakaguchi. I think that he said it was going to be about 30 plus hours for this chapter, and then there's another chapter coming later this year that's another 30 plus hours, and that's from an interview with, I think, Tech Radar. So if I'm going to be spending that much time in this game, which I plan on doing, then it's going to be nice to have those options, have options to go mobile, have options to play on my iPad. That's all well and good. I don't have like an Apple TV, and I don't have a Mac that I can really play on, but that's fine. I should be able to play this game in all its glory and in a very well optimized way with what I've got. So I'm happy about that. The big takeaway from this game for me is that, unlike many JRPGs, this game is pretty much immediately fun. One issue that I've run into with JRPGs, I've played a few lately some of which I've really loved, but they just take a while to actually get fun. And I think it's just because early on in the game, your character's underpowered. They don't have all their spells and cool equipment and all their XP. And it just takes a while to build all that stuff up and for the game to get interesting. But this game starts out fun pretty much right away. And it's not really that different from that many other JRPGs. It just, I don't know, the pacing, the exploration, the battles are fun to kind of learn how to do the battles. So, and there's not a lot of hand holding. The beginnings of this game are very good. So it's very fun to just pick up and play. It does not have that slow start that so many JRPGs have. And for me, that's a huge takeaway. But let me also mention, I need to go right into my first big talking point here, and that is the music. I love the music of Fantasian so far. The music definitely has really heavy Final Fantasy VII vibes, the original Final Fantasy VII. And in fact, this whole game has a lot of throwbacks to Final Fantasy VII so far, and I'll talk more about those. But right now, I'm just going to mention that if you remember Final Fantasy VII, for those of you who have played it, it has that very 90s ethereal kind of new age soundtrack. And there are more exciting moments and more upbeat songs, and what's his name? I can't remember the guy's name. Why can't I remember Sephiroth's name? Yeah, Sephiroth has his theme song, and it's very upbeat and very, very boss battle-y. And of course, this game has those same energetic tracks. But most of the time, when you're just navigating around, when you're in a town, when you're in the overworld, when you're in a various location, the music is very chill and very that kind of campy new age sound. But I mean, I dig it. I'm all for it. So, and it sets the tone right away that this game is just a very chill game. This is a very therapeutic, like, kick back, just don't worry too much. It's, I will talk about the difficulty of this game a little later, but I'm just going to say that this is a very chill game, and that is largely set, that is set in stone by the music, I think, early on in the game. They want you to know that this is going to be a relaxing experience, and I appreciate that. So next up, as we can see from this footage that we're watching, dioramas, handmade dioramas that are captured, photographed, videoed from all angles, and these are the locations that you wander around in. These are all handmade in real life. And they are captured like this, and then you wander around. This is not a new thing for video games. Plenty of video games have done stuff like this before. A lot of indie games, a lot of adventure games have had this, a lot of mobile games actually. But this is the first time it's been done by a JRPG that I know of, and I think it just works so well. It looks great. That's the most important thing. But also, it really takes a load off of the GPU, because your device is not constantly having to do all of this 3D modeling for the whole environment. So instead of all the 3D modeling, you're just looking at basically a still image. And of course, there's particle effects and things like that to kind of bring it to life. But the still image works so well and it looks so great. It basically is a really nice trick to have a really good looking game that is not so taxing on your device. And I think it's a brilliant move by this studio, Mistwalker, the studio of Hironobu Sakaguchi. Really good call on making these dioramas, and they're just so cool. I mean, this promotional material that we're watching right now, it's all about these dioramas, and so I love the dioramas. They're great. They're also great for treasure hunting, because you might move your character around a little corner that looks like nothing's over there, but then if you go over there, boom, the camera pans into this little nook or little cranny where there's a treasure chest, and there's a little sparkly on the ground with an item, and there's just seems to be this just teeming with treasure, all of these locations. So I really love that, because I love, JRPGs, finding little secrets, finding like a really good equipment that you're not supposed to find that early in the game unless you're really looking hard, and then being rewarded with that. That is very present in Fantasian for me. What else? What else can we say about the dioramas? The dioramas are just very stylish. It's definitely a bold and different move to do something like this for JRPGs, because let's face it, aesthetically JRPGs can be pretty samey. I mean, not all the time, but anything you can do to set yourself apart aesthetically as a JRPG is oftentimes welcome and necessary, and that's why I appreciate what they've done here with the dioramas. Let's talk about the story. The story is, I have less to say about the story. Basically, your main character is a very Cloud-like kind of ruffian individual who has amnesia, and he's walking around. He's trying to figure out what's going on. He's trying to see what he can remember, and he encounters a very Aerith-like female character who has grown up as an outcast on the outskirts of her village because her magic is too powerful. So there's a few tropes here, obviously. Her magic is too powerful, so she grew up on the outskirts of town. So she unites with this ruffian amnesiac guy because that's just what happens in JRPGs. For whatever reason, these people come together and they start fighting monsters. So the story has been fine. It's nothing crazy or nothing too interesting, but it's definitely it's fine. It goes well with the mood of the game. They're not throwing too much at me at once, I don't feel, but they are giving me lots of sort of world building and universe building with the sort of little stories and quests that you go on, and the dialogue from the characters and things like that. So stories is fine, I would say. The battles, any great JRPG has a unique battle system, and that box is definitely checked here. I'm not going to say this is a great battle system, but it is definitely unique. It is definitely a little different, not in crazy outlandish ways, but enough to set it apart for sure. This game has sort of these trajectory-based attacks where you basically aim to hit more than one enemy at once, and one character aims in just sort of a straight line. The other character aims in sort of an arc. We can kind of see that happening right here. And look, check out this arc. Woo! You see how it twisted a little more? Yeah. So you can sort of, depending on how you kind of arrange things with your trajectory, you can really hit a lot of enemies at once. So that's interesting. But really, the best part of the battle system would have to be this device that you have called the Dimension. Now, the Dimension is kind of like a Pokeball, or kind of like a Ghostbusters proton pack, where you are basically you turn it on, and then as you walk around a location, instead of constantly going into random battles, your monsters that you encounter go into this Dimension device. And then once the Dimension fills up with 30 monsters, then you are obliged to fight all 30 monsters at once. And that may sound kind of intimidating, but it's really not, because it's the way they have it worked out is, of course, with the battle system, you can hit a bunch of enemies at one time. And these Dimension fights are not, I mean, of course you're getting attacked more, but they do it in a very manageable way. So it's actually pretty easy to get through the Dimension battles. And it just saves so much time, because instead of getting nickeled and dimed with all of these random encounters, I mean, when was the last time you were in a JRPG and you were just like, yes, a random encounter, just what I wanted, just what I always wanted? I mean, you can't live with them, you can't live without them. You need the battles to get your experience up and things like that, but at the same time, and you need some challenge in the game, of course, to make it fun. But at the same time, you're not really just so jazzed about having these about these random encounters. So it's nice that this game gives you an option to just basically avoid random encounters and then have these occasional mega battles, which are very satisfying. That we're looking at one right here. They're very satisfying because you can hit a bunch of characters at once. You can take out so many of the characters at once. And then you have to fight a total of 30, assuming you've filled up your dimension. But you can fill your dimension also like halfway and then do the battle. So the thing is, if you're going to let it fill all the way up, you need to make sure that you heal beforehand. So there's a little bit of management there, keeping up with that, making sure you're healed at the right time, because once it hits that 30th monster, you got to go in and fight in the dimension. So, but anyway, way better, way preferred over the monotony of the random battles. And I'm thankful that this game is giving us a different look at random battles and how we can have these kind of big mega battles, these digests, where we just take care of all the monsters at once and we get all the same XP that we would get if we fought in individual battles. It's a very good system. It's very nice. Now, that kind of leads me into my last thought, which is the difficulty here. The difficulty of Fantasian is quite easy. That's a little bit to be expected because it is sort of a mobile Apple Arcade game aimed at a really large audience, many of whom have probably never played a JRPG, and so they need to be eased in pretty easily. Now, for me, that's just fine because I've played some JRPGs lately that are absolutely not easy. And so the fact that I get to play this really chill one that's very forgiving with its battles, there's potions all over the place that heal you. Your characters have good healing abilities that pretty much fill up your health. So it's kind of, it's quite easy, I would say, so far. I have not died yet. I've not come close to dying, even on like boss fights. It's all been pretty smooth sailing. Now, of course, that's not to say there won't be a difficulty spike later in the game. Of course, there could be. A lot of what I'm telling you right now, these are only first impressions. My opinions will obviously change about some of this stuff as I keep playing, but I plan to keep playing. I plan to play this game until the end. Like I said, it seems that we're going to have about a 30-hour experience on our hands at the moment, and then we're going to get another part 2 to Fantasian, another update, I guess, later in the year. I mean, so far, so good. I am having fun. I'm having more and more fun the more I play, and I needed a new JRPG to play, so here we go. Apple just dropped this out of nowhere, so there's no reviews out there. There's no there's no review embargoes, all that kind of stuff. So a lot of these Apple Arcade games get slept on for that, like I said. But this one may just be the most ambitious Apple Arcade game of all time, considering the length, considering just the overall scale and ambition of the project. And considering that this could be in the running for one of the best JRPGs of the year. I mean, I'm having fun so far, and I mean, I'm not really sure I see anything beating this, honestly. I'm not huge into JRPGs, but I kind of pay attention to what's happening. I keep my finger on the pulse of what's happening in the world of JRPGs, and I haven't seen anything yet that looks really as cool as this. At least not that I can think of. I'll probably hit stop on the recording and then immediately think of something like, oh yeah, of course. But I mean, there's some good stuff coming out this year, but this one is going to be probably a part of the conversation. And if you're anything like me and you tend to avoid mobile games or tend to avoid, Apple Arcade or whatever, because it's mobile, it's focused around mobile. If you have an Apple device to play this on, I would recommend it. Even if it's just a phone, this game works really well on a phone. Throw on some headphones and kick back, because this is a very fun, like I said, relaxing, chill game. You can chip away at it as you have time, and I think it's worth the experience. By the way, this has made me a lot more confident about the Final Fantasy big compilation game of all the different Final Fantasy like games and movies and stuff. All the stories are combining into that one game. I can't remember the name of it, but it's coming out next year and it's going to be mobile only, and that bummed a lot of people out. But now that I've kind of got my rhythm down here, you know, I've hooking my iPad up to my TV, using a DualShock, and then also playing some mobile on the side. It's working out pretty well. I hope that they use some of what we've learned in this game on that game. I hope the controls they borrow from this game. I hope the menus are nice and clean. I hope the battle system's nice and mobile friendly on that game, because there's a lot to learn from this game and how to do this kind of thing right. So anyway, guys, that's pretty much my impressions for this new game, Fantasian. Let me know what you think, and I will probably be talking about this game again, and I'll probably be talking about Apple Arcade again, because it seems that Apple may be a little bit discouraged by some people's engagement of the service. And so there's probably going to be some like nice, juicy industry related stuff to talk about with Apple Arcade coming up. But anyway, guys, thanks for checking me out, and take it easy.